Before we dive right into the story, please subscribe to this channel for daily stories and also drop a comment for us. Thank you. Lena Mwangi stepped through the private elevator into the penthouse foyer and paused, suitcase wheels stilled against the marble. The city dusk painted the windows lilac, and somewhere in the distance a siren wailed, lonely and fading. She had been away exactly 9 weeks and 4 days on the humanitarian mission in Katanga province, building maternal health outposts and lecturing midwives on emergency protocols. Fatigue pressed across her shoulders, but it was a delicious fatigue, earned through long days that mattered. She had missed home, missed her own bed, missed the smell of Lagos rain sweeping in from the Atlantic. Mostly, she had missed Brian. The silence in the apartment felt wrong. Normally Brian would have music playing, low Afro soul or classic high life, while he sautéed something experimental in the open kitchen. Tonight the only sound was the mechanical sigh of the climate control. Lena rolled her suitcase forward, heels clicking. That was when she heard laughter. A woman's laughter, rich and unhurried, echoing from the living room beyond the corridor. Lena's brow folded. She followed the sound. The scene unfurled like a stage play frozen mid-rehearsal. A stranger lounged on the Italian leather sectional, legs crossed, one stiletto dangling. She wore a silk slip dressed the color of old money and twirled a crystal flute between manicured fingers. The stranger's eye snapped toward Lena, and her lips stretched into a slow, appraising curve. "Oh," the woman said, voice syrup-smooth. "You must be the cleaner." Cleaner. The single word fell like a pebble into a pond, sending ripples through Lena's chest. She opened her mouth, closed it again. She took in the details, a designer handbag open on the coffee table, a silk robe, her silk robe, draped across the stranger's shoulders, the faint scent of Chanel drifting in lazy spirals. Lena set her suitcase upright. "And you are?" "A guest," the woman answered, rising. She was tall, statuesque, with skin polished to a mirror glaze and cheekbones that could cut glass. "Brian said the help sometimes comes unannounced." "I see you did not exaggerate." Lena's pulse throbbed in her ears. She caught sight of a framed photograph, her and Brian in Zanzibar, laughing under a salt-white canopy, lying face down beside an empty wine bottle. Something inside her shifted. "I am Lena," she said, voice measured. "Brian's wife." The woman's eyes widened, then narrowed with contempt thinly veiled as surprise. "Oh, darling. Wife is such an elastic term these days, is it not?" Before Lena could reply, the woman snatched her handbag, fished inside, and pulled out a slim envelope. "He left this for you," she said, thrusting it forward. "Something about signing papers." The envelope fluttered to Lena's feet. She did not bend to retrieve it. Instead she reached for her phone, thumb hovering over Brian's number. A tremor of disbelief threatened her composure, but she steadied herself with a long breath. "Pick that up," the woman ordered, "and perhaps brew me some coffee. Extra hot." Lena met her gaze, calm as deep water. "You should leave." The woman's laugh was a melody of mockery. "I do not take instructions from staff." Then, in one fluid motion, the woman swung her open palm. The slap landed against Lena's cheek with a crack that seemed to fracture the quiet. Heat blossomed across Lena's skin. Time slowed. The city lights outside pulsed like distant stars. Her breath left her in a controlled hiss. At that precise moment the elevator chimed, and Brian stepped into the foyer. He wore gym clothes, earbuds dangling around his neck, as if he had paused halfway through a treadmill run. Sweat darkened his collar. He froze at the tableau, his wife standing motionless. His mistress, there was no longer room for euphemism, poised like a victor after conquest. Brian's mouth opened. No words came out. He looked at Lena, then at the other woman, eyes ping-ponging, panic mounting. Beads of perspiration rolled down his temple. The silence gathered weight, until it was a living thing between them. Lena waited for Brian to speak, to shout, to apologize, to eject the intruder. He did none of those things. Instead, his shoulders sagged and his gaze slid to the floor, as though ashamed to meet any eyes at all. That was all Lena needed to hear. Without a word she lifted her suitcase, turned, and walked past Brian, past the elevator, past the life she had built molecule by molecule. Her cheeks still burned, but something else had ignited deeper within, an ancient, steady flame. Outside, night unfolded its ink across the sky, and Lena stepped into it with the quiet certainty of a woman who understood value, leverage, and time. Zara's apartment in Yabo was a mismatch of floral curtains, study notes, and half-finished art canvases. The hallway smelled of turpentine and fried plantain. Lena arrived just before midnight, and Zara answered the door wrapped in a paint-splattered kimono, eyebrows knit with concern even before a single question was asked. "Come in," she said, ushering Lena through a living room crowded with easels. A tabby cat dozed on the couch, lifting one eye to acknowledge the visitor. Zara poured ginger tea, laced it with wild honey, and waited. Lena told the story in layers, peeling back detail after detail until the slap itself felt like the least offensive part. When she finished, Zara swore softly and hugged her cousin tight. "First things first," Zara said, clearing space on the dining table now repurposed as a war room. "You are not staying silent." "I will not stay silent," Lena agreed, "but I will stay strategic." She opened her laptop and began downloading files from a secure cloud drive. Deeds, incorporation papers, share certificates, digital ghosts of the empire she and Brian had built during the hungry years. They had registered everything under a trust with Lena as principal signatory. The only pending documents were the final transfer forms Brian had been nagging her to sign. She never had, busy on mission after mission, planning to review them leisurely once she got home. Now procrastination had matured into salvation. Zara scanned a property schedule. The penthouse, the beach house in Aleco, the office downtown. These are still in your name. Lena nodded. The cars and the company account as well. Brian forgot one truth. Signatures are not May ink. They are power. Zara drummed her fingers. "What is the plan?" "First, asset consolidation. I need a lawyer outside Brian's circle." "Ezra Bamadil," Zara said instantly, pulling a battered Rolodex from a drawer. "He owed Uncle Kalapo during the microfinance audit. He will walk through fire for the family." "Call him at dawn," Lena said. "Tell him I require absolute discretion." Zara's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, a blurry photo of Lena leaving her own building, suitcase in hand, captioned, "Looks like the cleaner quit." Zara showed it. Lena stared until the image blurred. Then she closed her laptop with a decisive snap. "They want to humiliate me publicly. They will find out there is a price." She did not raise her voice. She did not swear revenge. She simply wrote a list on Zara's sketchpad, neat block letters marching down the page. 1. Freeze joint account. 2. File temporary injunction on property. 3. Serve eviction notice. 4. Secure media narrative. Truth only. No smay. 5. Dissipate. Rebuild. Zara watched, half awed, half terrified. "You are turning heartache into calculus." Lena met her cousin's gaze. "Pain is a loud teacher, but I was always a devoted student. Brian thought my compassion meant weakness. Compassion is a sword if held correctly." They worked through the night. Zara drafted statements. Lena combed through PDFs. The cat occasionally poured a paper clip. At dawn, the call with Ezra lasted 6 minutes. He listened, asked 2 crisp questions, and promised court filings within 48 hours. When Lena finally slept, head on the sofa armrest, she dreamed of ocean waves. The slap did not follow her. Instead, she saw pillars being uprooted, concrete cracking, and a garden blooming in the rubble. She awoke with sunlight on her face and an unshakable conviction. Quiet power was about to speak. Ezra Bamadil believed that preparation was a higher form of prayer. By 7 o'clock the morning after Lena's call, he was seated in his chambers, tie straight, laptop open, every statute and precedent relevant to marital property in Lagos State glowing on his screen. He had already dispatched a clerk to the High Court with applications for an emergency injunction and a restraining order on joint account withdrawals. When Lena and Zara arrived, Ezra greeted them with a respectful nod rather than a handshake, as if the air around Lena had become electrified and formalities might disturb the charge. "Time is our capital," Lena said by way of greeting. Ezra gestured to 2 chairs. "And clarity is our currency. Let us spend both wisely." For the next hour they reviewed documents line by line. Ezra highlighted clauses that positioned Lena as the sole beneficial owner of the penthouse, the Aleco Beach House, and 51% of Westbridge Consulting, the company she and Brian had founded 5 years earlier. Ezra's voice was calm, but his words sliced cleanly through any remaining ambiguity. You possess the controlling shares, he said, tapping a paragraph. This means you may remove him from executive authority pending a board resolution. Lena leaned back. I do not wish to destroy the company. I only wish to remind Brian that empires have foundations, and he was not the one who poured the concrete. Ezra allowed himself a brief smile. Understood. A precise correction, not collateral damage. He slid a thick file across the desk. Inside are the eviction proceedings, the account freeze, and a cease and desist letter addressed to your husband's companion. Service can begin at midday. Zara exhaled, equal parts relief and awe. You move quickly. Ezra folded his hands. Speed is a lawyer's mercy. Drag a case through mud and justice arrives smelling foul. Lena signed where he indicated. Her signature flowed, steady and unbroken. With each flourish she felt a thread snapping free from the tangle where Brian had spun around her trust. When the final page was done, Ezra closed the file with quiet finality. There's one more asset we have not discussed, he said. Your public narrative. Lena raised an eyebrow. Ezra continued. Brian has friends who thrive on perception. They may attempt to paint you as vindictive, thereby shifting sympathy to him. We must ensure the first story the public hears is anchored in truth, simplicity, and dignity. Lena thought of the blurry photo Zara had received, the mocking caption. She thought of the slap, of Brian's silence, of the stranger's perfume staining her robe. Truth will suffice, she said, but it must be told without venom. I refuse to taste bitterness every time my name is spoken. Ezra nodded, approving. I shall recommend a journalist known for balanced features. You will give one interview, no more. After that you let the facts breathe. They rose to leave. Ezra reached for a slim black umbrella. Prepare yourself, he said softly. Once power shifts, those who fed on its former host will swarm. Lena met his gaze, unflinching. Let them swarm. They will find I have no nectar for them. Outside, the morning had blossomed into humid brilliance. Zara hailed a cab, but Lena stopped her. Let us walk, she said. I need to feel the city at eye level. They moved along broad sidewalks thrumming with hawkers and commuters. Children in dusty uniforms chased one another past battered yellow buses. A woman balanced a pyramid of oranges on her head, calling prices in melodic Yoruba. Life carried on, indifferent to boardroom maneuvers and marital implosions. At Balagan Market they paused for roasted plantain wrapped in yesterday's newspaper. Zara watched Lena chew thoughtfully. You are very calm, Zara said. Calm is cheaper than panic, Lena replied. Outcome is what matters. Zara hesitated, then asked the question she had been avoiding. Do you miss him, even after what he did? Lena wiped her fingers. Missing is a luxury I will schedule later. At present I am occupied with reconstruction. They continued walking. A flock of egrets rose from the lagoon, white wings flashing against steel roofs. Each wingbeat reminded Lena of something her late mother used to say. A woman's silence is not absence, it is architecture. Brick by brick, thought by thought, Lena felt the new structure rise within her ribs. By dusk she and Zara were back at the apartment, drafting a press release that confirmed basic facts. Lena Mwangi had lawfully reclaimed marital assets pending separation negotiations. Speculation regarding motives was unnecessary. Dignity spoke louder than gossip. At midnight Lena's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It contained no words, only a photograph. Brian sat alone on the edge of their bed, head in hands, suit jacket discarded on the floor. The angle suggested the mistress had taken the picture, perhaps as evidence of her own crumbling world. Lena stared at the image for a long time. Then she deleted it. Somewhere on the city skyline a billboard flickered to life, advertising luxury watches that promised to measure more than hours. Lena closed her eyes and breathed. Time was indeed measuring more than hours tonight. It was measuring backbone. 2 weeks later the courthouse corridor buzzed with muted anticipation as Lena signed the final affidavit. Uniformed officers lined the walls, boots polished, expressions neutral. Outside, media vans idled, lenses aimed at the marble steps like cannons awaiting a signal. Lena adjusted the cuffs of her cobalt blazer. Zara stood beside her in a linen jumpsuit, phone set to silent. Ezra emerged from the clerk's office, documents stamped and sealed. We are ready, he said. They descended the steps. Flashbulbs erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Mwangi, is it true your husband's assets were funded by charity money? Do you intend to press criminal charges? Lena lifted a hand, palm outward, a graceful semaphore of restraint. She spoke one sentence, her voice steady and loud enough for every microphone. I am exercising my lawful rights without malice. Then she entered the waiting black SUV. Zara and Ezra followed. The vehicle rolled toward the penthouse tower, escorted by 2 patrol cars whose sirens remained silent but whose presence was unmistakable. Brian opened the door in crumpled sweats, eyes ringed crimson. The prestigious penthouse smelled of reheated takeout and wilted lilies, as if decadence itself had grown weary. Alana stood near the terrace doors wearing Lena's silk robe, hair hastily pinned. She tried to muster poise, but her gaze darted like a trapped swallow. One officer stepped forward. Court order for immediate eviction, he announced, handing Brian the envelope. You have 60 minutes to vacate. Brian scanned the papers, face blanching. Lena, can we talk privately? No, she replied, not unkindly, simply final. Alana's composure cracked. You cannot do this, she snapped. He said the assets were joint. Zara arched an eyebrow. Joint implies equal contribution. Would you like us to discuss percentages? Alana advanced, voice rising. Brian, tell them to leave. This is harassment. Brian looked at Lena. In his eyes swirled regret, fear, and a dawning comprehension that consequences had arrived and intended to stay. Please, he whispered. I need time. You had time, Lena said. Now you have 60 minutes. The officers began cataloging possessions. Alana lunged for a jewelry box, but an officer intercepted her. List items only, he said. No removals. Alana swore in frustration. Lena walked toward the master bedroom. She paused at the doorway where she had once imagined a nursery, where she had folded mission reports on late nights while Brian snored softly beside her. Sunlight poured across the unmade bed, illuminating dust motes that drifted like tiny questions. She opened a drawer and retrieved a leather notebook with her initials embossed. Inside were sketches of rural clinics, cost analyses, hand-drawn timelines. She slipped the notebook into her tote and closed the drawer gently, as if tucking away a ghost. Back in the living room, Alana was pleading with an officer about a collection of handbags. They are mine, she insisted. I bought them. The officer checked the court list. Unless you have receipts naming you as purchaser, they remain property of the estate. Alana turned on Lena, fury trembling beneath her eyelids. You will regret humiliating me. Lena regarded her with a calm born of sleepless nights and long prayers. Humiliation is a self-inflicted garment, she said. No one can force you to wear it. Alana made a choking noise and would have rushed forward had Brian not placed a trembling hand on her arm. Enough, he said. His voice cracked. Let us go. He faced Lena. I was wrong, he murmured. I see that now. Lena inclined her head. See it thoroughly. He opened his mouth again, but words failed. Instead, he herded Alana down the corridor and into the elevator. Flashbulbs outside erupted once more as they stepped onto the pavement carrying mismatched suitcases and plastic storage bins. From the balcony, Lena watched journalists swarm. She felt no triumph, only a strange, airy sadness, as if she were observing strangers enact a play whose ending everyone already knew. Zara joined her. You are allowed to feel victorious, she said gently. This is not victory, Lena replied. This is accounting. A patrol officer approached. Madam, property is secure. Do you wish to remain on site? Lena shook her head. No. Change the access codes. Then lock up. I will not live here again. She left the penthouse key on the marble island, its metallic glint catching late afternoon sun. As they exited, cameras clicked, but no questions were shouted. The crowd sensed that spectacle had ended and something quieter, deeper, was beginning to bloom in its wake. That evening, a short clip of Alana's escorted departure surfaced online. Within hours, it had traveled across continents, nesting on gossip forums and financial news alike. Headlines multiplied. Wife retakes throne. Mistress evicted. #borrowed grace trended on social media. Brands that had once courted Alana for her curated influence deleted collaborations overnight. Lena's single sentence from the courthouse echoed across talk shows. I am exercising my lawful rights without malice. Commentators dissected its poise. Columnists praised its restraint. In a modest guest room at Zara's, Lena scrolled briefly through the reactions, then powered off her phone. She lit a vanilla candle and opened her leather notebook. Instead of writing about clinics, she wrote about silence, about how sometimes the softest voice bends metal. Outside, a tropical storm gathered, distant thunder rolling like ancient drums. Rain tapped at the windowpane. Lena closed her eyes and listened, neither triumphant nor bitter, simply present. Each raindrop reminded her of the truth that began on the night of the slap. Value is not determined by the one who underestimates it. The first shaky clip of Alana and Brian exiting the penthouse hit the web before dawn, posted by a neighbor who filmed from behind a half-closed curtain. Within an hour it had migrated from local gossip pages to global celebrity blogs, each adding its own caption. Some called it poetic justice, others framed it as reversal of fortune, but nearly every headline carried the same image: the so-called mistress gripping a plastic storage bin while the lawful wife watched from a balcony like an unbothered monarch. At Zara's apartment, Lena sipped ginger tea while her cousin scrolled through a torrent of reactions. #Borrowed Grace trended for 10 consecutive hours, beating football scores and election scandals. Comment threads filled with strangers dissecting love, loyalty, and the price of arrogance. One viral tweet read, "There's something beautifully surgical about the way she moved. No screaming, only signatures." Lena set her cup down. "I will not read further," she decided aloud. Zara nodded. "Digital applause is still noise," she said. "Fame is a fickle choir." Meanwhile, in the glass conference room of Westbridge Consulting, Brian faced his board. 11 directors sat in ergonomic chairs, tablets glowing with financial projections. None looked pleased. The chairperson, a silver-haired strategist named Madame Uwazi, clasped her hands. "The public optics are catastrophic," she said. "Financial partners are requesting explanations. You assured us the separation was amicable." Brian rubbed his temples. "It was supposed to be. I misjudged the timeline." A younger director cleared his throat. "Share prices dipped 5% after the clip went viral. Venture clients are emailing hourly." Madame Uwazi lifted a document. Under Clause 19, the board may suspend a chief executive whose personal conduct threatens corporate stability. Brian's voice caught. "You want to remove me because of a marriage issue?" "We want to protect shareholder value," she answered. "This vote is temporary pending review, but the company cannot bleed while you find your footing." The ballot was electronic and anonymous. 10 green lights flashed for suspension, 1 yellow for abstention. None were red. Brian felt the decision crash over him like cold surf. After the meeting, he retreated to his car and sat in the dark interior, phone buzzing nonstop. He typed Lena's number, hesitated, and closed the screen. Nothing he could say would undo the image of silent betrayal that now defined him online. Far across town, Lena met journalist Fizayo Dele at a quiet cafe near the Botanical Gardens. Fizayo came recommended by Ezra for her even hand and refusal to sensationalize. She placed a voice recorder on the table but kept her notebook closed. "I want only the facts," she said. "No adjectives you would not sign your name beside." Lena appreciated that. She spoke of years building clinics, of bootstrap budgets and late-night grant proposals. She explained how the trust documents were designed to shield assets from political turbulence, not from marital infidelity, but that legal structure happened to protect her dignity as well. When asked about Brian and Alana, she answered without rancor. "His choices are his own lessons," she said. "Mine is to continue the work that matters." The interview lasted 40 minutes. Fizayo left with a single photograph, Lena standing beneath a jacaranda tree in bloom, petals drifting like lilac snow. No penthouse backdrop, no designer labels, only a woman in a simple linen dress, steady in posture and gaze. The article, published that evening, focused on Lena's humanitarian achievements and quoted Ezra regarding the legality of her actions. It ended with Fizayo's observation that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the architect of everything. Public sentiment solidified. Donations to Lena's foundation spiked. Pharmaceutical firms offered vaccine partnerships. International news outlets requested interviews, but she declined politely, forwarding them the published article instead. Alana's world moved in the opposite direction. Endorsement contracts evaporated overnight. A beauty brand demanded repayment of last quarter's campaign fee, citing moral turpitude. Her social channels filled with mocking memes comparing borrowed robes to borrowed credibility. In a cramped hotel room, she argued with her agent over speakerphone. "You promised these brands would stand by me," she cried. The agent sounded exhausted. "Influence cannot survive when the spotlight shows broken glass," he replied. "Sponsors pay for aspirational stories, not cautionary tales." Alana hurled her phone onto the unmade bed. She had thought elegance was something you could purchase, like the silk robe she once wore while calling another woman's home her own. Now every thread of that robe felt itchy with regret. That night, Lena and Zara prepared a modest dinner of jollof rice and grilled fish. The cat prowled under the table hoping for scraps. Zara raised a glass of chilled Zobo. To dignified resilience, she toasted. Lena clinked her glass. To lessons learned in perfect silence. Outside, storm clouds gathered again, charged with tropical electricity. Thunder rumbled like distant drums of change while rain descended in silver lines. For a moment Lena closed her eyes and tasted the air heavy with petrichor. Satan, that redemption was not something shouted from rooftops, but something grown in the quiet soil of consequence. Brian's new residence was a spare bedroom in a friend's duplex near the lagoon, walls bare except for an old sailing map. Each morning he woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling while dawn colored it pale gold. The penthouse had felt like command. This room felt like confession. On Tuesday he attended his first therapy session. Dr. Okoro sat in an armchair opposite, tablet balanced on her knee. She began with an open question. "Tell me what brings you here." "My wife's silence," Brian said after a long pause. "It is louder than any argument." He admitted the affair, the slap, the board suspension. He spoke of childhood insecurity, the hunger to be admired, the thrill of dangerous attention. He spoke until his voice cracked, then until it steadied again. Dr. Okoro listened, occasionally jotting a note. At the end she said, "Guilt can become a mirror or a wall. You must decide which." That evening Brian volunteered at a community pantry recommended by the clinic where Dr. Okoro practiced. He packed rice into paper bags, stacked in tomatoes, wiped counters. No one knew his name or history. Work was simple, repetitive, and oddly cleansing. Across the city, Lena chaired a strategy meeting for the foundation. Her team proposed expanding the solar-powered cold chain network to more villages. Funding offers exceeded previous projections by 70%. Lena approved a pilot program and assigned Zara to oversee field logistics. Afterward, she lingered alone in the conference room, reading a message from Dr. Okoro. The therapist had reached out, stating that Brian had authorized limited disclosure of his participation in therapy if Lena wished to verify. The message ended with a note. "Healing is rarely linear but always possible." Lena stared at the screen. She typed "Thank you for informing me," then deleted the words. She turned the phone face down. Meanwhile, Alana's spiral tightened. She had moved into a studio above an auto repair shop, where the walls sweated diesel fumes. One bulb flickered overhead like an erratic heartbeat. Her savings dwindled. When she refreshed her social feeds, the follower count dropped in real time. Panic clawed her throat. Past midnight, she dialed Lena's number. The call rang 3 times before connecting. Alana's voice emerged brittle. "I know you have no reason to listen, but I am sorry. Truly. I thought I was winning something valuable. I realize now I was only a temporary tenant in a life I did not build." Lena stood by the apartment window, moonlight tracing silver across her notebook. "I forgave you already," she said. "That forgiveness freed me, not you. Whatever you do with your freedom is your story." Alana swallowed. "Thank you," she whispered. She wanted to say more, to beg for a handbook on redemption, but the line was already silent. The following weekend, Lena visited a rural clinic near Abeokuta, where her foundation funded a new maternity wing. Nurses greeted her with shy pride, showing off incubators powered by rooftop solar. Lena knelt beside a young mother cradling a premature infant. The mother's gratitude poured out in a soft Yoruba lullaby. In that small room thick with disinfectant and hope, Lena felt a deeper breath into her lungs than any she had taken in weeks. On her return trip, she stopped at a roadside fruit stall. The vendor recognized her from the courthouse clip and hesitated, unsure whether to approach. Lena smiled first. The vendor gifted her a ripe mango, refusing payment. "Your strength fed many sisters," she said. Lena thanked her, humbled by a solidarity she had never sought yet now received. That night, the pantry where Brian volunteered hosted an outreach dinner for elderly neighbors. He ladled pepper soup, pausing to chat with a retired teacher who reminded him of his late aunt. Midway through the event he looked up and saw Lena standing at the door. She wore a simple white blouse, no cameras in sight. He nearly dropped the ladle. She raised a hand in greeting, not invitation. He resumed serving, hands shaking. She walked among the tables, speaking with the guests, never approaching him directly. Later, outside in the parking lot lit by sodium lamps, he found her leaning against her car. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I came because feeding people is not a performance," she replied. "It is a necessity." He nodded. The words he had rehearsed felt thin. Finally he said, "The therapist helps me see the man I chose to become. I do not like him, but I am learning." "Learning is good," she said. "Learning is movement." He searched her face for warmth, for an opening. She offered neither door nor lock, only presence. After a moment she got into the car and drove away without haste, leaving him to the quiet roar of his own thoughts. Zara awaited Lena at the apartment, sketchpad in lap. "How did it feel to see him?" she asked. "Like visiting a former country," Lena answered. "Familiar roads, different flag." She opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "Redemption must be earned where no one claps." In the early hour storms cleared, revealing a sky full of relentless stars. Brian stood on the duplex balcony, rainwater dripping from the eaves. For the first time in many nights, he did not check his phone. Instead, he whispered an unpolished prayer for humility and watched the constellations shift. Somewhere in the vast dark a future waited, unpromised yet possible. Alana paced the cracked tiles of her studio, the only light a twitching bulb above the sink. Her designer wardrobe had dwindled to 3 dresses and a pair of worn flats. She cupped her phone as though it were a candle against gathering dark. For days she had rehearsed an apology, sentences breaking like fragile glass, but fear of scorn kept her silent. Tonight the silence felt heavier than scorn could ever be. She dialed Lena's number, throat tightening with each ring. When the call connected, she spoke quickly, afraid courage would abandon her. "I betrayed a woman who never harmed me. I have no excuse," Alana began, voice shaking. "I thought proximity to wealth would cure the poverty I carried in my bones. Instead it spread inside me like rust." The line was quiet except for Lena's breathing, even and steady. "Continue," Lena said. Alana swallowed. "That day in the penthouse I saw you enter and thought calling you the cleaner would keep you beneath me. It was fear, not arrogance. Fear disguised as theater." Lena's answer was soft. "Fear is honest when it admits its own name." Tears slipped down Alana's cheeks. "I am living in a room where water leaks through the ceiling. Brands cut me off. Friends vanished. I know this is consequence, not tragedy, but consequence still hurts." Lena listened, memories flickering, the slap, the cold perfume, the robe. Yet those memories no longer pulsed with pain. They lay quiet like pressed flowers. "I forgave you already," Lena said. "Forgiveness is a door I walk through, not a door I hold open behind me. It frees me to move forward." "Does it free me, too?" Alana asked, voice small. "Only you can answer that," Lena replied. "Guilt can be a chain or a compass. Decide which one you need." Alana nodded though Lena could not see. "Thank you for hearing me." Lena's parting words were simple. "Heal deeply, not loudly." The call ended. Alana lowered the phone, exhaling a breath that felt heavier leaving than entering. She opened her window to the night air and for the first time since eviction noticed stars above the neon blur. They did not solve anything, but they proved light still existed even when you were not looking up. In Zara's apartment, Lena set her phone aside and reached for her notebook. She wrote a single line. "The greatest revenge is living proof that mercy is stronger than mockery." She closed the cover and allowed herself a quiet smile. Across town, Brian folded laundry in the pantry stockroom when his phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Okoro. "Tomorrow we discuss accountability rituals." The text read, "Bring an example of a daily habit you have begun for no one but yourself." Brian considered. He had started waking early to run along the lagoon, not to post mileage on social media, but to feel his lungs burn clean. He typed, "Morning runs at dawn." He added, "I never timed myself before. Now I do it only for the silence." Dr. Okoro replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Brian chuckled at the small informality and tucked his phone away. Evening settled over the pantry. Volunteers stacked leftover bread into crates destined for shelters. An elderly woman with silver braids approached Brian. "Young man," she said, handing him a folded receipt. "You double-counted my tins earlier. I owe 20 naira less." Brian inspected the slip. "Keep it," he insisted. "Honesty is lighter than a lie," she replied, slipping the note into the donation box. She patted his arm. "Carry light things, my son." The simplicity of her gesture pierced him sharper than any boardroom reprimand. He realized integrity was not a speech made in a crisis, but a series of tiny choices made when no one watched. That night he penned an email to Madam Uwazi. "I accept the board's decision and will cooperate fully with interim leadership. My priority is stabilizing the company I once guided Polly through personal chaos." He hit send without drafting 10 versions first. Truth, he found, wasted fewer words. Zara painted past midnight, brushstrokes dancing across canvas in deep emerald and burnt orange. Lena watched her cousin conjure landscapes of imagined valleys. During a pause, Zara asked, "Do you think you will ever love him again?" Lena answered honestly, "Love never truly dies. It changes citizenship. Mine migrated to a country called Respect, and it is waiting to see if he qualifies for a new visa." Zara laughed, a bright ringing sound. "Immigration of the heart," she said. "I like it." They shared hot chocolate while rain whispered against window glass. At length Lena spoke. "I thought reclaiming property would close the wound. It stitched the edges, yes, but the healing came from purpose. I stood inside the maternity ward yesterday and felt whole, not because I had won, but because the work kept breathing." "Purpose is a physician," Zara agreed. "And you are a willing patient." The following morning Lena visited the construction site of her foundation's new headquarters. Hard hats flashed beneath the sun, and workers waved as she walked the perimeter with the foreman, inspecting structural beams. She asked questions about insulation, solar alignment, water filtration. The foreman remarked she knew more about infrastructure than many architects. "I built clinics in mud and in steel," Lena replied. "Buildings are stories in another language." Her phone buzzed with a message from Fazayo the journalist, article syndicated by Reuters today. "Global coverage emphasizes your foundation's impact. Congratulations." Lena typed, grateful. "Let the focus remain on the mission." She slid the phone away, attention returning to beams and concrete that would one day house logistics maps, vaccine refrigerators, and training halls for midwives. Across the street a small crowd had gathered, curious onlookers. Among them stood a familiar profile, Brian. He wore jeans and a simple shirt, hands in pockets, observing quietly. He did not approach. Lena acknowledged his presence with a nod, then continued discussing stormwater runoff with the foreman. When she glanced back, Brian was gone. Brian remained at a coffee kiosk across the square. He watched workers pour cement, listening to their banter. One joked that the boss lady could outplan any man in Lagos. Another said she tipped better than politicians at election time. Brian sipped his coffee, mixture of pride and regret. She had always been that woman, and he had known yet forgotten. His phone lit with a message from Alana. It read, "I apologize to Lena. I am leaving Lagos to start over in Port Harcourt with family. This is farewell." He stared at the text, recalling their first reckless laughter in a rooftop bar, the illusion of invincibility crackling like neon around them. Illusion, he saw now, could bankrupt the soul. He typed, "I wish you peace and growth," then deleted it. Some closures were better written only in the heart. Later that evening Brian visited the lagoon again. The water mirrored city lights in broken ribbons. He removed his shoes, rolled his trousers, and stepped onto the cool sand. Each wave licked his ankles like a question. In the hush he spoke aloud, not to anyone present but to the memory of vows broken. "To choose you each day even when ego shouts louder," he recited, repeating lines from the vows he had squandered. "I did not choose. I wondered. Now I walk home barefoot, learning the road." He scooped a handful of wet sand, let it trickle through his fingers. Grains clung to his skin, shining in the moonlight like scattered embers. He closed his fist and breathed slow, the tide pulling and returning like the very rhythm of repentance. Far across the water a ship's horn sounded, deep and mournful. Brian lifted his gaze, following the vessel's slow glide. People on board moved tiny as ants yet bound toward a destination. He realized journeys did not guarantee arrival. Commitment to motion mattered most. He turned inland, brushed sand from his feet, and faced the city skyline. Somewhere among those illuminated windows Lena was writing in her notebook, perhaps sipping tea, perhaps already dreaming. The thought did not fill him with entitlement. It steadied him like a distant lodestone. He whispered one promise to the quiet streets. Tomorrow I will be kinder, even if no one sees. The lagoon breeze carried his words away, scattering them into the vast dark where transformation begins. August heat settled over Lagos like a heavy shawl, but at 6 in the morning the air along the marina still held a hint of cool. Brian jogged the familiar route, sneakers thudding against paving stones. Sweat soaked his collar. Each breath synced with footfalls. Inhale, 2-3, exhale, 2-3, forming a mantra that cleared the mind. Near the tanning point he spotted volunteers setting up tents for a health fair sponsored by Lena's foundation. Bright banners fluttered, displaying the new logo, a stylized baobab tree sheltering a mother and child. Brian slowed, tempted to fade into a side street, yet something urged him to stay. He joined the queue at a hydration station. A young volunteer offered water. "Good to see community spirit bright and early," she said cheerfully. Brian smiled, nodding. He wanted to blurt, "My wife built this." Instead he simply drank. Across the plaza Lena coordinated with medical interns. She wore a yellow head wrap and a clipboard hung from a crossbody strap. She tested each station's solar power pack, confirming refrigeration units were cold enough for vaccines. Her movements conveyed calm command, and the staff responded to her like planets to gravity. Midway through the morning a microphone crackled. Zara, acting as MC, welcomed residents and explained free screenings. She invited the foundation director, Lena Mwangi, to address the crowd. Lena stepped onto the low platform. Sunlight outlined her silhouette. She spoke of shared responsibility, of how healthy mothers raise strong futures, of how community was a verb, not a noun. Applause rose, warm and sustained. Brian listened from the edge of the crowd. He clapped once, then let his hands fall, recognizing applause should be for the message, not an attempt to be noticed. When screenings began he slipped into line for blood pressure checks like anyone else. A nurse wrapped the cuff around his arm. Numbers displayed on the monitor slightly elevated. "Stress," she advised. "Hydrate and rest." He thanked her and moved onto the nutrition tent where volunteers handed out pamphlets on balanced diets. He lingered near a board showcasing local produce partnerships. His presence remained anonymous, but service as a way of exposing character even without a name tag. He helped an elderly man carry a bag of oranges to a bench. He steadied a toddler chasing a runaway balloon. Each small act stitched a thread into his own unfinished tapestry of restitution. Meanwhile, 2 journalists approached Lena asking for quotes about board governance and her estranged husband. She declined politely, directing them instead to mothers waiting for treatment. "The stories are theirs, not mine," she said. Zara noticed the exchange and whispered, "That boundary is titanium." Lena responded, "Privacy is not secrecy. It is sacred ground where growth occurs untrampled." By afternoon the fair concluded. Doctors reported 120 vaccinations administered and dozens of hypertension cases referred for follow-up. Volunteers dismantled tents. Lena personally thanked each participant, her gratitude specific. "You packed supplies with precision. You translated instructions clearly. You stayed till every last child ate." While loading the final generator into a van, she spotted Brian wiping tables nearby. Their eyes met. She approached. "Thank you for helping," she said. "I came as a citizen, not for approval," Brian answered. "Then you served rightly," Lena replied. He offered a tentative smile. "May I walk you to your car?" "I have one more task," she said. "We deliver leftover meals to the night shelter at Butte Meta. If you wish to walk, walk there." He nodded, falling into step beside her. They carried boxes of jollof rice to the foundation van, loading them carefully. The short drive passed in reflective quiet, city bustle fading to low hum. At the shelter children played tag between bunk beds while volunteers set tables. Lena supervised distribution. Brian joined seamlessly, handing out water sachets and stacking empty boxes. When the last plate was served, the shelter director gathered everyone for a group photo. Brian stepped out of frame, but Lena tugged his sleeve gently. "All hands belong in the picture," she said. He obeyed, standing at the back. The camera clicked, capturing smiles and sweat-dampened brows. No one there cared that one volunteer was a suspended chief executive. Service-level titles. Outside, dust bled amber across the sky. Lena leaned against the van fender, exhaustion softened by purpose. Brian approached, nervous. "I wrote something for therapy," he said, unfolding a small notebook. "It is a list of amends I intend to make. Some are tangible, some are habits. May I read a line?" She gestured assent. He read, "I will measure success by the peace it brings, not the applause it receives." She absorbed the sentence, then said, "Keep writing. Peace scales indefinitely." "I also bought a simpler ring," he admitted. "Not as a proposal, but as a reminder. Gold band, plain. I wear it on the middle finger to signify balance." She looked at his hand. The band caught twilight, muted and sensé. "I am not asking you back," he added quickly. "I am asking the universe for permission to repair myself." Lena exhaled, a sound halfway between sigh and release. "I cannot grant or deny that permission," she said. "The universe already whispers yes to anyone brave enough to change." Brian nodded, moisture gathering in his eyes. He offered no further plea. They returned to the van. Lena drove, Brian in the passenger seat. Conversation floated toward neutral topics: traffic reform, solar incentives, a new children's book Zara illustrated. At a junction, Brian asked to be dropped 2 blocks from his duplex. He thanked her, climbed out, and stood watching the van merge with evening traffic. He felt neither rejected nor absolved, only committed to the long mathematics of consistency. Back at Zara's flat, Lena journaled beneath a desk lamp. She wrote, "Today I saw humility without theater. It is a seed. Whether it blooms is not my task to monitor. I will tend my own garden." She set down the pen and stretched, shoulder muscles aching pleasantly from lifting boxes. Across the room, Zara painted a final highlight on her canvas, sunlight striking water, then leaned back, satisfied. "How is the story ending?" she asked. "It is not ending," Lena said. "It is settling into its natural rhythm. Endings require applause. Rhythm just requires breath." Rain began again, soft drumming on the roof. In that lullaby of water, Lena felt the day fold itself neatly into memory. No grand closure, no media headlines, just an honest fatigue earned through service and a quiet hope that tomorrow would offer another chance to practice presence. The Harmattan winds arrived early that year, brushing the city with a cool dryness that softened the glare of the sun. At dawn, Lena drove to the lagoon park, parking beneath a neem tree whose branches swayed like slow dancers. She carried a folding chair, a thermos of hibiscus tea, and her leather notebook. Today was her birthday, though she had told no one. Solitude felt like both gift and companion. She settled near the water's edge. Fishermen pushed wooden boats from the shore, nets coiled like stories waiting to be cast. Lena opened her notebook to a blank page. Instead of writing, she watched light spread across the water in widening ribbons, and she let the quiet speak first. After an hour, a soft tread crunched behind her. Brian approached, holding a small box wrapped in brown paper. He did not intrude on her space. He waited until she looked up. "Happy birthday," he said. She blinked. "Who told you?" "Zara," he admitted. "She said birthdays mark breathing milestones. People should not pass them alone." "I chose alone," Lena said, but her voice lacked annoyance. Brian knelt on the sand, leaving a respectful gap between them, and placed the box at her feet. "No ribbons, just tape." He stepped back. "I have no right to surprises," he said. "Open it only if you wish." She considered. The paper tore easily, revealing a carved wooden music box. On its lid, burned into the grain, was a baobab tree like the Foundation's emblem. She lifted the lid. A gentle lullaby drifted out, familiar yet distant. "That song," she murmured, recognizing the melody from their first road trip, when they had driven through cocoa plantations singing along with a radio that faded in and out. "I arranged the tune myself," Brian said. "I learned basic carpentry at the shelter workshop. The mechanism came from a market stall." He ran a hand through his hair, nervous. "I wanted to create, not purchase." Lena closed the lid. The music stopped. She nodded once in acknowledgement, but her gaze lingered on the tree etched into the wood. Brian took a breath. "I have something else, but it is not a request. It is a statement of intent." He removed a plain gold band from his pocket, smaller than the one he wore earlier. Inside the band a single word was engraved: presence. He held it out, palm open. "This ring is not for your left hand," he said. "Only you decide that future. I ask permission to slide it onto your right hand, symbolizing a commitment to heal beside you, not bind you. If at any point you feel burdened, remove it and retain it. No questions, no blame." Lena studied the band. The word presence glinted in the morning light, both challenge and promise. She thought of her journal page. Love can return only in the language of consistency. She thought of Brian wiping tables when no cameras watched, of morning runs he never posted online, of therapy sessions shaping him from the inside out. She extended her right hand. Brian's eyes widened. Hope held on a fragile breath. He slipped the band onto her ring finger, his touch reverent, almost trembling. He did not release her hand immediately, but when he did, the gesture felt like an oath rather than possession. "This is not yes to forever," she said quietly. "It is yes to healing, slow and honest." "Thank you," he whispered, emotion roughening the words. "I will honor the pace you set." They sat together, not touching, watching fishermen haul shimmering nets. At length Brian rose. "May I bring breakfast from the roadside stall?" he asked. "Yam fritters and pepper sauce. It was your favorite after clinic shifts." Her smile was gentle. "Bring enough to share with the fishermen. Then join me." He jogged off, light in his stride. Lena reopened the music box, letting the lullaby play. She closed her eyes and breathed in the ha matinee. The gold ring felt warm against her skin, not heavy. She sensed the story turning a page, not closing a cover. When Brian returned balancing takeout bowls, the fisherman waved appreciatively. They ate in companionable silence, interrupted only by amused laughter when pepper sauce proved hotter than memory suggested. Afterward Brian cleaned the site, leaving no trash. As they walked back to the car, he did not reach for her hand, but his presence matched her pace exactly. Later that evening Lena told Zara about the ring. Zara's eyes widened, but she asked no leading questions. Instead she poured tea and said, "Gold suits you, cousin, but wisdom suits you more. May they always shine together." Lena slipped the ring off, examined the engraving, and slid it back on. "It is a seed," she said. "Let us see what soil offers." That night she wrote, "A promise that carries no demand can breathe. I will let it." 3 months later the small chapel overlooking Ikoyi Hill stood hushed in early evening light. The roof beams glowed amber where sun slanted through tall windows. Only a dozen chairs lined the aisle, draped with marigold garlands that filled the air with earthy fragrance. At the altar waited a modest brass stand holding 2 simple candles. No opulence, no excess. Lena entered through the side door wearing a gown of deep gold silk that flowed like calm water around her ankles. Her hair was gathered into a low knot, a single marigold tucked behind one A. She carried no bouquet. Instead, her left palm rested lightly on a leather-bound journal, ribbon marker peeking out. Zara adjusted the gown's hem. "Ready?" she whispered. Lena nodded, heart steady. This ceremony was not a grand return to old vows, but the forging of new promises measured by daily actions, not dramatic declarations. In a small room off the vestibule, Brian waited with Ezra, who had agreed to officiate. Brian wore a tailored navy suit, but no tie, collar open as if to say life must breathe. On his right hand the balance ring remained. In his left jacket pocket lay another band, identical except for the engraving, consistency. His fingers brushed the pocket in silent rehearsal. Guests were few: Zara, Dr. Okoro, Madame Uwazi, the pantry director, 2 midwives from the Katanga mission, and the elderly woman who had insisted on paying the correct 20 naira. Each person represented a thread in the weave of their separate redemptions. Ezra signaled the musicians, 2 students with violin and kora. The notes rose, gentle as dawn. Brian stepped to the altar. He turned as Lena entered, golden in the slow light. His breath caught, not with possessive pride but with astonished gratitude. When she reached him they faced Ezra, who opened a slim folio. "We are gathered to witness not the start of a fairy tale but the continuation of a journey already in motion," he began. "These 2 stand before us by choice and by courage, with eyes fully open to frailty and possibility. They ask no applause, only accountability." Ezra glanced at Lena. She opened her journal to the marked page and read her vow, voice low but clear. "I promise presence, morning, night, and the uncertain hours between. When fear tempts me to retreat into silence, I will speak truth with kindness." I will measure love not by words offered in crisis, but by ordinary acts repeated until they shine. She closed the journal. Brian removed the new ring from his pocket. He met her gaze. I promise consistency, action at the speed of trust. When ego whispers shortcuts, I will choose the longer road of humility. I will remember that your dignity shelters mine, and I will guard it as I guard breath. He slid the band onto her left hand. It settled beside the right-hand ring, gold reflecting gold. Ezra raised his hands. In the presence of chosen witnesses, I affirm these promises. No signatures are necessary. The contract is carved in daily living. There was no pronouncement of husband and wife. That title remained understood yet secondary to the vows themselves. Instead, Ezra said, "Walk forward, side by side, and let each step be the ceremony renewed." The musicians shifted into a lively folk tune. Zara and the guests formed a loose circle on the chapel lawn where long tables held dishes of jollof rice, grilled tilapia, roasted vegetables, and hibiscus punch. Laughter rose, mingling with birdsong. Lena greeted each guest with grateful hugs. She held Dr. Okoro's hand a moment longer. "Thank you for guiding him through shadows," she said. The therapist smiled. "Healing is collaborative." He carried the lamp. I only trimmed the wick. Madame Awazi toasted with chilled zobo. To partnerships that outlast headlines. Brian shared a soft joke with the pantry director, then bent to thank the elderly woman for her honesty lesson. She pinched his cheek in mock scold. "Do not make her cry again, young man. Tears water crops, but hearts are not farms." He promised to remember. Near sunset, Zara unveiled her gift, a painting depicting two baobab trees whose roots intertwined beneath the soil, unseen yet strong. Lena touched the canvas, eyes shining. "Roots speak in silence," she murmured. As dusk deepened, lanterns flickered along the chapel path. Children chased fireflies while guests lounged on picnic blankets. No speeches, no choreographed dances, just the hum of contentment. Later, Lena and Brian slipped away to the hilltop overlook behind the chapel. City lights shimmered far below, reflected on lagoon waters that stretched like quicksilver. They sat on a stone bench, hands resting loosely together. Brian broke the silence first. "Some people will still remember me as the man who fell spectacularly." Lena turned to him. "Then give them a better sequel, one measured in quiet chapters." He considered that, nodding. "I can live with being a slow-burn novel." A night breeze lifted Lena's hair. She breathed in marigold and saute. "Gold is not for beginnings," she said, echoing the words she once wrote. "It is for wisdom." Brian glanced at their rings glowing softly. "Then let us keep polishing it." They sat until stars brightened. No rush to join the revelers. In the hush, Lena remembered the slap that sparked the journey, the paperwork signed in a lawyer's office, the viral clip that turned the internet like a tide. She remembered clinics rising in remote villages, children vaccinated, mothers surviving childbirth. She realized the real treasure reclaimed was not property or reputation, but the knowledge that her voice, once quiet, had always carried power. Brian spoke gently. "Thank you for letting me stand beside you." "Thank you for learning how," she answered. They rose and walked down the path, lanterns guiding their steps. The party continued. Soft music, shared stories, but their presence changed nothing and everything at once. They simply joined the rhythm already flowing. Among friends they poured punch, passed plates, laughed easily. No one cheered a grand exit. There was none. When the last dish was packed and the final lantern dimmed, Lena and Brian drove away in a modest hatchback toward the small bungalow they had chosen together near the lagoon. Inside, the walls were still bare, paint tins stacked in corners, future memories waiting like unopened jars. On the living room mantel, a single item rested under soft lamplight, Lena's framed journal page from months earlier. This time, love is not loud. It is consistent. Beneath the frame sat the wooden music box. Brian wound the key once, and the lullaby drifted through the unfinished rooms, settling into fresh plaster like a blessing. They stood together, listening. No words required. Outside, the Harmattan breeze rustled palm fronds. Waves whispered against distant pilings. And in the quiet home 2 rings of gold caught the lamplight, reflecting a promise that would need no audience to remain true.
Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment your thoughts and share our channel with your friends. See you in the next story. From your favorite stories.